Government and military witnesses testify, on major UFO cover-up. The cover-up, UFOs. Mercury and Gemini astronaut, Colonel Gordon Cooper. At Edwards Air Force Base I was having some of the cameramen film precision landings. A saucer flew right over them, put down 3 landing gears, and landed out on the dry lake bed. They went out with their cameras towards the UFO. It lifted off and flew off at a very high rate of speed. I had a chance to hold it, the film, up to the window to look at it. Good close-up shots. There was no doubt in my mind that it was made someplace other than on this earth. In my opinion, they were worried it would panic the public if they knew that someone had vehicles that had this kind of performance. So they started telling lies about it. Then I think they had to cover it with another lie. Now they don't know how to get out of it. FAA Division Chief of Accidents and Investigations, John Callahan. This particular incident started with a phone call from the people in Alaska. I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "Well, it's that UFO. The UFO was bouncing around the 747 here. They brought in 3 people from the FBI, 3 people from the CIA, and 3 people from Reagan's scientific study team." Well, I've been involved in a lot of cover-ups with the FAA. When we gave the presentation to the Reagan staff, they had all those people swear that this never happened. But they never had me swear it never happened. For those people who say that if these UFOs existed, they would someday be on radar and that there'd be professionals who would see it, then I can tell them that back in 1986, there were enough professional people that saw it. What I can tell you is what I've seen with my own eyes. I've got a videotape. I've got the voice tape. And I've got the reports that were filed that will confirm what I've been telling you. United Kingdom Chief of Defence, 1971 to 1973, Admiral Lord Peter Hill-Norton. I have frequently been asked, why a person of my background, a former Chief of the Defence Staff, a former Chairman of the NATO Military Committee, why I think there is a cover-up of the facts about UFOs. Governments fear that if they did disclose those facts, people would panic. I don't believe that at all. There is a serious possibility that we are being visited, and have been visited for many years, by people from outer space, from other civilizations. It behooves us to find out who they are, where they come from, and what they want. This should be the subject of rigorous scientific investigation, and not the subject of rubbishing by tabloid newspapers. Director of CIA, Admiral R.H. Hillenkoetter. It is time for the truth to be brought out in open congressional hearings. Behind the scenes, high-ranking Air Force officers are soberly concerned about UFOs. But through official secrecy and ridicule, citizens are led to believe the unknown flying objects are nonsense. To hide the facts, the Air Force has silenced its personnel. U.S. Navy pilot, Frederick Fox. Publication GenApp 146C, has a section that says you will not reveal any information regarding the UFO phenomenon, under penalty of $10,000 fine, and 10 years in jail. So the secret has been kept. UFO message, don't mess with nuclear weapons. U.S. Air Force, FAA, Captain Robert Salas. The security guard called and said, "Sir, there's a glowing red object hovering right outside the front gate. I've got all the men out here with their weapons drawn. We lost between 16 to 18 ICBMs, intercontinental nuclear missile warheads at the same time UFOs were in the area and were observed by airmen." A high-ranking Air Force officer said, "Stop the investigation. Do no more on this and do not write a final report. I heard that many of the guards that reported this incident were sent off to Vietnam." U.S. Air Force, Professor Robert Jacobs. So this thing UFO fires a beam of light at the warhead, hits it, and then it moves to the other side and fires another beam of light. And the warhead tumbles out of space. What message would I interpret from that? The UFOs were telling us don't mess with nuclear warheads. Major Mansman said, "You are never to speak of this again." After an article about the incident years later, I would get phone calls all night long. People would call and start screaming at me. One night somebody blew up my mailbox. More cover-up, advanced technologies developed from UFOs. Russian Air Force, Space Communications Center, General Vasily Alexeyev. As a rule, places where UFOs appear are objects of strategic significance, rocket complexes, scientific test establishments. In other words, there is a high concentration of advanced science and to some degree danger. I know that in some places they even learned to create a situation which would deliberately provoke the appearance of a UFO. They came up with a table with pictures of all the shapes of UFOs that had ever been recorded, about 50, ranging from ellipses and spheres to something resembling spaceships. The study of UFOs may reveal some new forms of energy to us, or at least bring us closer to a solution. Apollo 14 astronaut, Edgar Mitchell, Ph.D., Aeronautics, MIT, sixth man to walk on Moon. Yes, there have been ET visitations. There have been crashed craft. There have been material and bodies recovered. There has been a certain amount of reverse engineering that has allowed some of these craft, or some components, to be duplicated. And there is some group of people that may or may not be associated with government at this point, but certainly were at one time, that have this knowledge. They have been attempting to conceal this knowledge or not permit it to be widely disseminated. People in high-level government have very little, if any, valid information about this. Most have no more knowledge than the man in the street. As to the question, how could it be kept secret? It hasn't been kept secret. It's been there all along. But it has been the subject of disinformation in order to deflect attention and create confusion so the truth doesn't come out. I believe it is a very important effort that we get congressional oversight of all this. U.S. Air Force, Intelligence Operative, Master Sergeant Dan Morris. Eisenhower wanted somebody to be in charge. The CIA was working primarily for itself. Most of the military intelligence directors were working for themselves. So, it was organized, but the name of the NRO was kept secret for years. The National Security Agency, the killers work in that. Secretary of Defense Forstall was the first powerful person that was eliminated because he was going to release information on UFOs, and nobody has ever paid for that crime. Who was stationed at Roswell? The only nuclear bomb squadron in the world. We focused several powerful radars on the UFOs, and it caused 2 of them to crash. One of them had 2 aliens on it. One of them was wounded or hurt, the other was alive then, but before we could get him anywhere, he had passed on. I would interview people who claimed they had seen something, and try to convince them they hadn't, or that they were hallucinating. If that didn't work, another team would give all the threats, threaten them and their family. They would be in charge of discrediting them, making them look foolish. Now, if that didn't work, there was another team that put an end to that problem, one way or another. UFOs are both extraterrestrial and man-made. Even back in Tesla's time, we had free energy. It's not that our government doesn't want us to know that there are other people on other planets. What they don't want us to know is that this free energy is available to everybody. That's the greatest secret. So secrecy about the UFOs is because of the energy issue. Some would like for us to believe that the aliens are our enemy now. There's no proof that I have ever read in any official document where, unless they were attacked, they ever shot. We don't have a threat from Russia anymore, but if we keep shooting at those aliens, we might have a threat from them. We should demand that our government stop trying to shoot down those aliens. U.S. Army, Colonel Thomas E. Bearden. Probably 50 inventors have invented virtually free energy systems. If we use these systems, we can clean up this biosphere. But, what we have is a situation where the entire structure of science, industry, and the patent office are against you. I've been a victim of quite a bit of suppression. And behind this, we have a few people who are quite wealthy. The more powerful the agency, the more they will resort not only to legal, but to extra-legal means to suppress their competition. The Grand War Plan. It is based on a lie. Fairchild Industries corporate manager, von Braun spokesperson, Dr. Carol Rose Sign. When Wernher von Braun, father of modern rocket science, was dying of cancer, 1974, he asked me to be his spokesperson. Von Braun actually told me that the reasons for space-based weaponry that were going to be given, the enemies that we were going to identify, were all based on a lie. He said the strategy that was being used to educate the public and decision-makers was to use scare tactics, that first the Russians are going to be considered the enemy. Then terrorists would be identified. Then we were going to identify third world crazies. We now call them nations of concern. The next enemy was asteroids. Against asteroids we are going to build space-based weapons. And over during the 4 years that I knew him and was giving speeches for him, he would bring up the last card. And remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We are going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens, and all of it is a lie. He would not tell me the details. I am not sure I would have absorbed them if he had told me the details, or even believed him in 1974. In 1977, I was at a meeting in Fairchild Industries in a conference room called the War Room. They continued the conversation about how they were going to antagonize these enemies, and at some point, there was going to be a war in the Gulf, a Gulf War. Now this is 1977. Disclosure Project, founder, and director, Stephen M. Greer, M.D. The government, as you and I might think of it, is really quite outside the loop. Leaders in the Pentagon who I have briefed have no more access to such projects than any other civilian, unless they are on the inside. We have insiders and scientists who can prove that we possess energy generation systems capable of completely replacing all forms of currently used energy generation. Every single person who is concerned about the environment and the human future should call for urgent hearings to allow these technologies to be disclosed, declassified, and safely applied.